All right, so AI and the law.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things right now where it feels like everybody's talking about it,
Yeah,
but where do you even begin?
right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's so easy to kind of get lost in all the hype. So, are you ready for some jaw-dropping stories?
Always.
Because I think we've got them.
I have a feeling we do. Let's do it.
Okay, so before we get to all that juicy stuff,
Okay.
we got to lay a little groundwork.
You have foundations.
Foundations, exactly.
Yeah.
So our trusty AI and law PDF actually traces this whole thing way back further than you might think.
Okay.
We're talking the 1950s.
Wow. Really? That's interesting. So like pre-internet, we're talking about
Oh, yeah.
way back.
Like before a lot of this tech even existed.
Okay, so this is like the OG.
This is OG AI and law, and it's fascinating.
Wow. So like what were they even doing back then? Like I can't even imagine.
I know. It really makes you think, like, what did they even think AI would be?
Right.
So in the 1950s, the first legal expert systems were born.
Okay.
And these things, they weren't exactly like the sleek AI we imagine today. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it was
Yeah,
doing any
right.
arguments in court or anything.
No, I doubt it. More like what? Punch cards and...
Oh, I'm picturing like a scene straight out, like a cheesy sci-fi flick.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like all clunky computers and like blinking lights. And
Reels spinning.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I'm envisioning.
Okay, so paint me a picture. What were these systems like? What were they capable of?
So picture this. Giant computers, like room-sized.
Okay.
And these things had like less power than your smartphone does today.
Wow.
And instead of code, they were fed information through punch cards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's wild. And their whole deal was logic. So you feed in legal rules.
Right.
In the system, it tries to apply them to a case.
Okay, so like a super, super basic, like if-then kind of situation.
Exactly. Like if this, then that.
Yeah.
They were basically like glorified calculators with law degrees.
Okay.
So not quite HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey.
No, yeah.
Not quite.
Yeah.
But they were onto something.
Yeah.
One of the earliest examples, and this wasn't specifically for law, but it kind of shows where things were going, was a system called MYCIN,
Right, YCN.
developed in the 1970s.
Okay.
And this thing, get this, it diagnosed infectious diseases.
Wow. So they were already using it in the medical field.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
And what MYCIN really showed was how AI, even in its early stages, could tackle these really complex problems.
Right, so it demonstrated the potential.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this paved the way for more specialized legal expert systems. We had systems like Ruler, developed by Xerox, and then Stanford University came up with Litigator.
Litigator. Okay, I like it. I like the names.
Right. Very dramatic.
Catchy.
I'm picturing like comic book covers with these things.
So these early systems, what were they focusing on? What kind of legal tasks were they tackling?
So they were doing things like contract analysis,
Yeah.
you know, trying to help with decision making.
Okay.
And I mean, they were basic. I mean, compared to what we have now, is like night and day.
Right.
But it was that spark.
Yeah.
You know,
A little kindling.
it showed that AI could actually do something
Yeah.
in the legal world.
That's so interesting.
So fast forward to today,
Okay.
and things are definitely not so basic anymore.
Right.
I mean, we're talking AI drafting contracts, predicting case outcomes, even trying to make arguments in court.
Whoa. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. This is the future,
This is it.
but also like the present.
Right. It's happening now.
It's wild.
And this is where those jaw-dropping stories I promised come in.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because we have got to talk about the now infamous case of ChatGPT in the courtroom.
ChatGPT in the courtroom. I've heard whispers.
It's the story that everyone's talking about
Yeah.
because it really highlights both how amazing this technology can be,
Okay.
but also the very real risks
Oh, okay.
could come with it.
So like a cautionary tale.
Oh, yeah, big time. So you can find all the details in How to Use ChatGPT to Ruin Your Legal Career,
Okay.
which, fantastic title, by the way.
Amazing.
And then Lawyer Used ChatGPT in Court-Incited Fake Cases.
Oh, no.
That one too.
Oh, no.
But the gist is this. These lawyers, they thought, hey, you know what? Let's let ChatGPT do the heavy lifting on this legal research.
Okay, so they got like a little too confident.
A little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
But you can kind of see how it happens,
yeah,
right?
no. I mean, I get it. It's tempting.
It's like, oh, this amazing technology. It can do all this stuff.
Yeah, it seems so easy.
So they give ChatGPT the reins.
Okay.
And ChatGPT, in its infinite wisdom, decides, you know what? I'm going to invent some case law.
What?
I kid you not, completely made up cases,
No.
citations, the whole 9 yards.
You've got to be kidding me. And they didn't catch it. And they didn't catch it.
Nope.
Oh, my God.
Submitted it to a federal judge.
You're kidding.
I am not.
No.
This actually happened.
Wow. That's like next level. And so what happened?
So as you can imagine, the judge was not impressed.
No, I don't imagine so.
It became a whole thing.
I bet it did.
A very public, a very embarrassing lesson for these lawyers.
Yeah.
In why you maybe double-check ChatGPT's work.
Always double check.
Fact check, especially when you're talking about, the law.
Especially the law.
So it's a good thing they weren't arguing in front of Judge Judy.
Oh, man. That would have been amazing television, though.
Well,
oh, my gosh.
That would have been a whole other level of viral video.
I would love to have been in the, control room for that.
Oh, absolutely. But all jokes aside,
Okay.
I think this ChatGPT case really drives home the point
Okay.
that AI, at least for now, is not this magic solution.
Right.
It's a tool.
Yes.
And like any tool, it can be used really well.
Yeah.
Or it can blow up in your face.
Absolutely. It's not a magic button.
Exactly.
It's not just, do my work for me.
Right. And it takes skill, I imagine, to know how to even use these tools correctly.
Well, exactly. And that's something that the Clio articles really highlighted, was that AI output, what you get out of it, is only as good as the data that it learns from.
So garbage in, garbage out, like they say.
Exactly. You can't expect an AI to make these incredible, persuasive legal arguments if it's been trained on, internet fan fiction.
Right, or like conspiracy theories.
Exactly. It needs that high-quality information, and that's something that has to be, really carefully thought about.
So it's almost like you've got to train the AI the way you would train, a law student, almost.
In a way, yeah, you've got to teach it, and you've got to make sure it's got good teachers.
Interesting. So we've talked about the good, the bad, the potentially ugly.
Yeah.
Let's get to the question I think is on everybody's mind.
Okay, the big one.
Is AI going to replace lawyers altogether?
Well,
Dun, dun, dun.
I knew this was coming, and it's the question, right? I think, like you said, everyone's thinking about it.
Right.
And I think the answer is way more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
Okay.
Because the law is complicated. It involves a lot of human judgment, empathy, creativity, these things that, AI, at least in its current form, just can't fully replicate.
Right. So it's not like you can just feed a bunch of data into a computer and expect it to suddenly have, the wisdom of Solomon or something.
Right. Exactly. It's not about replacing that intuition.
Okay. So is this less about AI lawyers replacing human lawyers and more about AI transforming the legal profession as a whole?
I think that's a really good way to put it, because I think one of the things that this technology could potentially do is make legal services more affordable and accessible, especially for folks who right now can't even afford a lawyer.
That would be huge.
Right.
That would be a game changer.
Because imagine AI-powered tools that, maybe they help you draft a simple will, or they help you navigate a landlord-tenant dispute, or even just get basic legal advice.
So instead of being this scary thing that's coming for your job, it's more like having a legal eagle in your pocket almost.
Yes, I love that. It's about empowerment.
Okay, so less Terminator, more like helpful sidekick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about empowering, not just lawyers to do their jobs better, but also the people that they serve.
We've talked about a lot here. The good, the bad, the big what ifs.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, but as we kind of go further down this road of AI and law, are there other things that we haven't even talked about yet that we need to be thinking about?
Well, absolutely. And while we haven't, specifically encountered a lot of ethical concerns in the materials that we've been looking at for this deep dive,
Right.
it's important to remember that with any new technology, especially one as powerful as this, it's always, always, always important to be thinking about responsibility.
So just because, the articles we happen to be looking at today don't mention, a laundry list of ethical dilemmas,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that those dilemmas aren't out there.
Exactly. It's when you're learning to drive, no one's next to you, reading out a list of every possible thing that could go wrong.
Right.
But you still need to be aware of the rules of the road and kind of think about, okay, if this happens, what do I do?
Right.
So, you brought up a really good point earlier about, AI needing good data. Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if an AI system is trained on biased data, then, it's going to reflect those biases.
Right.
And that could lead to some really unfair outcomes, especially in the legal system.
Right. So we're not just talking about building a brilliant AI lawyer.
Yeah.
We're talking about building a fair one.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right, because, I mean, that's the whole point of the legal system, isn't it?
It is. It's about building a legal system that is more efficient, more effective, but also more fair for everyone involved.
And speaking of fairness, one of the things that one of the articles mentioned was this idea that eventually AI could be used to actually predict case outcomes.
Okay.
Which, that brings up some really interesting and maybe even a little bit unnerving possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's getting into like Minority Report territory a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Mm.
Do we really want to know the outcome of a trial before it even begins?
It's a really interesting question, and it's one that's actually being debated, in legal circles.
Hmm.
Some people argue that this could make the system more efficient, encourage more settlements, maybe avoid these costly, lengthy trials.
Okay.
But, other people, they worry that it could really undermine the whole idea of due process and our right to a fair trial.
It's like that old saying, right?
Yeah.
It's not whether you win or lose. It's how you play the game.
Right, exactly.
But what happens when AI starts changing the rules of the game itself?
Ooh, I like
Yeah.
that. That's a good one.
That's kind of what we're grappling with here, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good point because as we integrate AI more and more into these systems that we rely on,
Right.
we have to constantly be asking ourselves, are we enhancing justice or are we kind of accidentally tilting the scales?
Right.
And that brings us to another really important point, which is accountability.
Right. Accountability. Because if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
if an AI messes up, who takes the blame?
Right.
Is it the lawyer? Is it the programmer who wrote the AI?
Right.
Is it the company that made the software? Like, where does the buck stop?
It's really interesting because we are in
Yeah.
uncharted territory, really, legally speaking, to kind of figure out where that accountability is.
Yeah. And it just gets, I think, more and more complex when we think about AI evolving beyond just these tools. Right. Like, what happens when AI is actually participating in the legal debate?
Right.
Maybe even, like, judging cases.
Whoa.
Like, is that a future we're ready for?
I mean, it's a question that, it sparks a lot of debate even within, the legal field and folks who know a lot more about this than I do.
Yeah.
But that idea of AI judges, it might sound like science fiction.
Totally.
But it brings up these really profound questions, I think, about what it even means to have a justice system that's fair and impartial.
Because if you can program an AI with, like, all this legal knowledge,
Right.
can you program it with empathy? Can you program it with compassion?
Right. Those more nuanced.
The things that we usually think of, like human qualities.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that gets to, I think the core of, this whole discussion we're having.
Yeah.
As AI changes and evolves, so does our understanding of what the law is and the values behind it.
It's like this really fascinating mirror, almost. It's making us kind of confront these big questions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's safe to say this deep dive has been pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely.
We went into this thinking about AI and the law and how it's changing things, but it's so much bigger than that.
It is.
And it's happening now.
And I love that, one of the big takeaways from the AI and law piece was that idea of continuous learning.
Yes.
Because that applies to, all of us.
Absolutely.
No matter what we do.
Yeah.
This isn't just about lawyers. No. This is a technology that's impacting, healthcare, finance, our everyday lives.
I mean, we're talking about on the show, clearly it's affecting everyone.
Exactly.
So it's like, even if we never set foot in a courtroom,
right,
we should still be paying attention to how this is all playing out.
We are all stakeholders in this.
We are, yeah, that's true.
Whether we realize it or not.
And the choices that we make now about how we develop this tech, how we regulate it, how we use it,
100%.
that's going to determine, what the future looks like.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, this is not just like robots and legal briefs,
Yeah.
This is about how AI is shaping our society.
100%. Yeah.
And that brings us to the big question we want to leave you with today.
Ooh. Okay, Hemi's.
If AI can already analyze case law and draft legal arguments, what's next?
Yeah, what's next? What will it be able to do in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years?
What does the future hold?
I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
Me too. A little nervous, but mostly excited.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for having me.
It's been quite the ride.
I know. I learned a lot.
Me too. And we'll see you next time when we dive into a whole new set of fascinating topics.
Sounds good.